Jen, it's Fantasy Festivus. Time to air your fantasy grievances. Who let you down this week?
Well, I'm going to go with a full position group this week. I talked about running backs a couple weeks ago. Let's talk wide receivers this week from week 11. Brutal, man. There was a little cluster of wide receivers that are normally wide receiver ones that decided to be wide receiver 2s, 3s, 4s, and even 5s this past week. Stephon Diggs, wide receiver 16, which isn't horrible, but for him, not great. Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver 21. Then we dropped down. CeeDee Lamb put up a wide receiver 46 performance. Yeah. Not what you expect from him. A.J. Brown, wide receiver 48. And finally, Mr. Justin Jefferson, wide receiver 56 on the week. All of that was in half PPR points. Ugly, ugly, ugly for managers who count on those guys every week. Got a big fat. I'm trying to think of what colon you're stocking with the I don't know, for Thanksgiving, but whatever. They got a whatever.
Yeah, I have a league with Justin Jefferson and Amari Cooper, and I lost that league despite having a really nice game from Amari Cooper. Yeah. I thought I was set. Stupid Vikings. No, I'm with you. Now let's get to the show. Welcome, everyone, to the Most Accurate Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Brandon Niles. With me are my excellent co-hosts, Jen Eakins and Chris Allen. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. It's the holiday week. I've got family in town, been able to take a slight break in order to spend some time with family and take a short rest, especially before Thursday and the weekend. So no, it's been a good week so far, and more fun to come, on Thursday and in the weekend too. So doing all right. Jen, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm really good. I just, just like you, looking forward to Thanksgiving. I just had a little Friendsgiving outing last Saturday night. Super fun. My friends have it every year. The 21st anniversary or 21st.
Oh, that's cool.
Straight. I know. It's super fun. Adults only. Good time. Lots of good food.
Wait, 21 years of doing that? That's
I'm old,
awesome.
Chris. Yeah. No.
I'm not saying you're old. I'm just saying that's really cool that
a
group
actually
of friends gets
started
together.
It. Yeah, no, they started it, I think, in college, people that didn't go home or whatever. So I haven't been there every single year, but I've been there for most of them. It's super duper fun. So we did that. And then I always do that every year. And then Thanksgiving itself is just super chill, pajamas, food, football. You know, can't really beat that.
Love it.
Brandon, how are you? I'm sure you're looking forward to your tofurkey this Thanksgiving.
I don't know what we're gonna do, but I'm excited about. I might come to your house. That sounds really nice. Pajamas and football sounds like an absolutely fantastic day to me. As a reminder, this is our weekly streaming episode where we'll be emphasizing hot pickups for the primary streaming positions. That's quarterback, tight end, kicker, and team defense. Let's check out how we did last week. Our sleeper streamer of the week, quarterback 12 for Ryan Tannehill. Pretty good. That'll work. That's QB1 numbers. Taylor Heinicke, unfortunately, quarterback 24, but Marcus Mariota was quarterback 14. So pretty good week, Chris. If you listened to Chris and started Ryan Tannehill, you were in pretty good shape. Tight end streamers, Foster Moreau, Tyler Conklin, Tre McKitty, all kind of rough weeks, but I like the process, and Foster Moreau should be another one this week I'm sure we'll get to. Kickers, you were pretty sterling. Robbie Gould, kicker 14. Brendan McManus tied for kicker 6. Greg Joseph down at kicker 24. Disappointing with the rest of that Minnesota offense for sure. Defense did pretty good. The Jets were 8th. Commanders were 1st. And then my deep options didn't do so well. Bengals and Bears tied for 22nd, tied for 17th. But Jets and Commanders both came in good. So that's good and solid. There are no buys this week. So streaming needs probably not quite as dire as usual. But for those streaming quarterbacks week to week, who is our top quarterback streamer, our sleeper streamer of the week this week, Chris?
We're going back to the well. I mean, Ryan Tannehill getting his, the playoff revenge game against Cincinnati this week at home against the Bengals. And while I do think that there is always some concern about Derrick Henry just essentially being Derrick Henry, right? We're always waiting for that massive blow-up spot from the King himself. But going up against Cincinnati's defense is actually not as bad as one would think it would be so far over the past few weeks, as Cincinnati has dealt with injuries to Chidobe Awuzie. They've been rotating some of the guys in and out of the lineup along their defensive front. I mean, they've been having some issues. So teams have been averaging about 29 to 30 yards per drive. They've also given up at least one passing touchdown in every single week so far. So And even mobile quarterbacks. I mean, while Ryan Tannehill is coming off of the ankle injury that had him sidelined for a couple of weeks, I mean, mobile quarterbacks have been averaging about 25 yards per game too. So at least gives Tannehill a decent floor. We've seen now with Treylon Burks becoming more and more a part of that offense. We just saw him in primetime last week having such a big game. I mean, while Derrick Henry might pop up and throw a touchdown, as we saw last week too, I'd still think that Ryan Tannehill probably provides the best floor and ceiling combination of any of the streamers this week. So I'd say he's my top play since he's at home. Good matchup. Also has a solid team total. Ryan Tannehill for sure.
Excellent. And good to see Treylon Burks back in there. Don't forget, Sleeper's the fastest growing fantasy platform with excellent custom settings for all fantasy commissioners. I'm talking Dynasty, Redraft, IDP, you name it. It's easily accessible, wildly mobile friendly. So go download the app and join or start a league today. Before we get to the other quarterbacks that you've got, Jen, I feel like I just cut you off. Did you have something to add about Ryan Tannehill?
Well, I was going to talk about the photo that is now gone. There it is. We can't, you've got to acknowledge the photo every week, and there it is.
I mean, credit to Sal. I mean, every time, man.
Must love dogs. There's Tanny's little face and the dog.
Sal's Tannehill photo game is on point. Absolutely on point. Okay, so we've once again, definition of a streamer player with less than 40% rostership on Yahoo. So if there's a big name out there that we're not talking about, chances are they're rostered in too many leagues to be considered for this show. Chris, I know Ryan Tannehill, the best option, sleeper streamer of the week, but I know you've got a couple other quarterbacks for us. Who you brought?
So I got a few. Taylor Heinicke, Marcus Mariota, if you want to go deep, Kenny Pickett as well. But we'll start with Taylor Heinicke because I know folks will probably look back at this past Sunday, see that Heinicke put up a dud. What was it, 7, 8, 9 points, like somewhere in there, and just assume that this matchup or even this week, he's not worth considering. But, I mean, if you look at that game, I mean, up against the Texans, I mean, Davis Mills threw a pick six within the first 5 minutes of the game. There was really no pushback from the Houston Texans. I mean, Dameon Pierce was bottled up to, less than 20 yards, less than 50 yards, something along those lines.
Yeah, he struggled.
Yeah, so there was no reason for the Commanders to push in on offense. So if we can at least assume in this matchup, they're going up against the Falcons. I mean, Falcons so far have been one of the top offenses in terms of rushing success rate, whether it's been Marcus Mariota himself, Cordell Patterson having yet another kickoff return just this past week. So, I mean, they have at least some level of explosivity on offense. Drake London now becoming a larger part of the offense with Kyle Pitts sidelined for at least the next 4 weeks. We'll see if he's shut down for the rest of the season. But either way, we can assume that Atlanta is going to push back. We can assume that Atlanta is going to be capable of putting up the yards required in order for Taylor Heinicke and the Commanders to actually generate a little bit more on offense than they did just this past week. And on top of that, Falcons defense, it's been one of the defenses we've wanted to target from a streaming perspective the entire season. Didn't matter if AJ Terrell was in the lineup or if he wasn't. I mean, last week, they still allowed, 32.5 yards per drive just this past week, and that was with Terrell back in the lineup. So if we are thinking that guys like Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, and insert Antonio Gibson as a pass catcher as well, should be possible, decent options against the Falcons this weekend, all that value intersects at Taylor Heinicke. So I would think that as a deeper option, because Taylor Heinicke's floor is a little bit lower because it doesn't carry the same rushing upside as someone like Ryan Tannehill would in a typical matchup, I would say Heinicke, also a decent spot start for week 12.
Excellent. I was wondering, Jen, that Houston team is looking awful, but Dameon Pierce has been pretty steady throughout most of the season. With the season wearing down and rumors of Davis Mills getting benched and this offense seeming really bad, should we be worried about Dameon Pierce? Are you worried about him as the RB2 that he's been this season?
It's interesting because coming into the season, I was off of him because I was worried. I was worried about the offense, and I was worried about him being negative game scripted every single week because they're going to be behind every single week because they're not good. And he's proved us wrong a bit last week. What happened, right? You play, you meet up against a tougher defense, and they stopped him. And so, I think he's fine for what he is. I don't think that we should expect, like you said, RB2 numbers, I think are fine. I don't think he's, going to have those big RB1 weeks. And, their schedule, I'm not exactly sure what their schedule looks like, but, I think that he's, I wouldn't try to get rid of him per se. There's a lot of there's not, I guess I was going to say there's not a ton of other options out there
Sure.
in that section. I mean, you're either going to get waiver wire guys, which you're not going to get that kind of production. So I think if you have him, I think you lower expectations a bit, but I think he'll be fine.
Makes sense. I'm sure the Houston offense, it looks awful. We'll get to that in a little bit when I do my defenses. Chris, Kenny Pickett, who the coach had some glowing words about this week, saying he's getting better in every aspect of the game. Tell me what you like about Kenny Pickett this week.
I think I don't know if I necessarily agree with Mike Tomlin, but I will at least, because I don't want Steelers Nation coming after me or anything like that. But I would say, at least for fantasy purposes, Pickett's still gunning it down the field. It's not like, even though that there was a little bit less passing volume just this past week against the Bengals, he had a negative 8% pass rate over expectation, which is one of the lowest that he's had since becoming the starter for Pittsburgh. But he was still, 10 air yards per attempt. He was still willing to sling it down the field, whether it was, George Pickett. Deontay Johnson was getting a few targets here and there. Pat Freiermuth. There are a number of pass catchers on the Pittsburgh squad that we're still wanting to roster week in and week out. So again, it's almost the same thing like Ryan Tannehill. It's like if we're interested in Treylon Burks, or take that back, if it's more like the Commanders, right? Because we're still interested in rostering Terry McLaurin, still interested in rostering Curtis Samuel, Antonio Gibson, because of receiving ability, all that intersects at Taylor Heinicke. Same basic deal with Kenny Pickett, right? Because we still think Najee Harris, now with Jalen Warren somewhat sidelined with an injury. We still like Pat Freiermuth. We still like George Pickens, so on and so forth. So again, all of that intersects with Kenny Pickett. And with his aggressive tendencies, the Colts, as of right now, 17.2 adjusted fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position. That's 21st, according to our metric here, 4-for-4. All of that kind of at least leads me to believe that Kenny Pickett should at least have a decent game against the Colts. And even though it's an away game, at least it's in a dome. Don't have to worry about being cold in Pittsburgh or anything like that. So I think, again, Kenny Pickett, decent, deeper option for week 12.
Excellent. I'm kind of rooting for that kid, and I don't know why. I know you're a Bengals fan, so that's no offense in that regard, but I don't know. Najee Harris, Kenny Pickett, the Steelers are more likable than they've been in recent years.
It's always good to see more younger quarterbacks getting their shot and seeing them develop in the league. And as long as they wind up, I think good football is better than bad football. While it's a simplistic thing to say, and seeing younger quarterbacks develop into good quarterbacks and quarterbacks that we enjoy watching, I think it's always a good thing for watching, just the total overall quality of watching football. So I'm with you.
Yeah, I'm with you. I agree. Okay, let's get to your tight ends this week. It looks like I think you brought an extra one for us. I'm excited.
I did. I brought a if this then that as my fourth option. But I will start by saying, it goes without saying that it's a bad week to stream tight ends. It's always a bad week to stream tight ends. It's very, very ugly. I did bring some names, but it's just ugly out there. And personally, I'm in a league that I've been hanging on to Kyle Pitts because it's so ugly that you have to. And now I just went to the waiver wire before the show to do there's literally no bodies for me, and I have to get somebody to put in there. It's gross. It's extremely gross. But we'll start with Foster Moreau, who you mentioned earlier on in the podcast. Listen, Foster Moreau, he's playing in Seattle. He is 40% rostered, by the way, so he is right at the cutoff for streaming eligibility. He's coming off a brutal, outing. He scored 3.8 half PPR points last week. He does get a shot to rebound. He's in a fantastic spot to do so. The Seattle Seahawks are dead last in tight end adjusted fantasy points allowed. They are allowing 17.4 fantasy points or half PPR points to tight ends. That's a lot. For the tight end position. So it's there for him, right? They're also Seattle is allowing the second most receiving yards to tight ends, 67.8 per game, which I found interesting. It's a lot. So it's all set up nicely for Foster Moreau. We'll see what happens, but he's there for you. Second guy on here is Juwan Johnson. He is 31% rostered. He is playing at the 49ers this week. Juwan Johnson is quietly he's the tight end 11 right now in half PPR points a game.
He gets in.
Right? He gets in. There's not a lot of healthy options to throw the ball to in New Orleans. Not a good matchup, though. The 49ers are fourth against tight ends this season. So not a great matchup on one hand. Other hand, like you said, he gets in. There's opportunity there. Tight end is ugly. So there he is. Third Third guy is very gross. Tyler Conklin playing at home against Chicago. This is the deal. If the Jets make that quarterback switch, which it looks like they should, well, definitely should, looks like they are going to, we don't know, non-committal, but we'll see. If they make that switch, I think he could be worth a dart throw. The Bears are the middle of the road in tight ends as far as defensively. So, if you need him, Tyler Conklin is there. I know a lot of people, he's burned a lot of people over the course of the season streaming. So hold your nose, click the button, put him in there, and hope that he falls in, or hope that they make that switch and you've got either Flacco or White gets in there and, jar something loose in the offense and he, scores.
I like that. That's a really good point with Zach. I want to get Chris's take real quick on which Jets quarterback we would hope for if we're trying to stream Tyler Conklin. Like, is Joe Flacco the guy we want, or do we want that little bit of that Mike White magic?
I didn't mind because like when Mike White was starting last week, there was a almost like stark contrast in the way that him and Zach Wilson were playing, because I think Mike White had almost half the average depth of target to Zach Wilson, but it was just he kept peppering like the middle of the field and they were continuing to sustain drives. So that was overall a good thing for the entire squad. So it's not like he was just hitting either the tight ends or the running backs, or, it was just like, it wasn't one sole position that was benefiting. It was the entire offense that was capable of moving the ball down the field. That's why we saw outbursts from, I think it was it Michael Carter that wound up scoring? I remember it was against the Bengals. It was in week 9 or something like that when they wound up winning, that it was like, I think they had like 2 different players that had over 100 scrimmage yards, a couple of touchdowns across the board. So it's just like, it was entire offense became productive. So I wouldn't mind seeing like Mike White, like in the backfield, because for even half PPR purposes, we know that there are multiple targets or multiple catches that would typically be involved, because that's just how White sees the field and how he plays the game.
Yeah, I'm very interested. Mike White had 2 great games and 1 terrible game, and it was a roller coaster last year. I'd be curious to see what happens if they do actually make that switch. Jen, I didn't mean to derail you there. No. I just was curious which quarterback we were looking for there. Tell me about Tre McKitty.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. So yeah, my 4th bonus tight end, Tre McKitty. So Gerald Everett, groin injury. He was kind of on track to play and then was pulled last minute. Like, he didn't even have a tag for most of the week. And then all of a sudden he was questionable and didn't play. So obviously if he plays, he is the tight end for the Chargers. However, if Gerald Everett is out, we get Tre McKitty against Arizona, a very known, sieve, colander, Swiss cheese, whatever you want to say there for the tight end. They're 31st against the position this year. Kittle just dropped 22.4 half PPR points on him 2 days ago. So Tre McKitty could be a secret guy if Gerald Everett is out. Unfortunately, we may not know, until the day of, but he's probably on your waiver wire and will be there until Sunday morning. So if the last minute, if you see that Gerald Everett is not playing and you're questionable at tight end, he's just a good dart throw. Any of these guys we're throwing out there.
Yeah. What's up, Chris?
Why does Tre McKitty have an apostrophe in his first name?
I don't know, but I'm a fan.
I didn't know he did actually until I saw, I wrote him down as not that. So I don't know. That's new to me.
Is it short for something?
Probably. I'm
gonna go down a Wikipedia rabbit hole after this show's over.
I have to say McKitty's a great last name.
That's awesome.
Something about it I just I enjoy. But yeah, so this is new to me. I did not know that was there.
I almost thought it was a typo, and then I looked it up. I was like, no, it really does have the apostrophe. There's nothing after the apostrophe. I didn't know you could do that.
It's not short for anything either. That's
maybe
it's
just Tre apostrophe.
You know how Tre. In Spanish you have the acento, maybe it's Tre. Yeah. Maybe it's an accent of some kind that they put on there. I don't know.
I'm just gonna add an apostrophe to the end of my name.
Yeah.
Is that really his middle name, Roosevelt? Is that for reals?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Okay.
Tre Roosevelt McKitty is fantastic. Chris, you can't do that because your name ends with an S, and then everyone will just take possession.
Possession. That's awesome. Chris is Allen.
Okay.
Yeah. Chris is Allen. Yeah.
Chris is Allen. Yes.
Awesome.
Hey, get your hands off that Allen. It belongs to Chris.
Yes.
That's the way
Chris
it goes.
is Allen. Yeah.
Now I'm just thinking about Jets. I was looking at didn't Elijah Moore explode with Josh Johnson and Joe Flacco and all that? Are we more interested in Elijah Moore if they make the quarterback switch?
I put him in my stash this week in there because nobody wants him. And if they make that switch, why not? And he had 4 targets this week or last week. So
progress.
He's somewhat out of the doghouse, right? He's at least making his little footsteps out of the doghouse. He had 4 targets. So if they make that switch, I mean, I threw him on there. I'm like, why not?
Sal totally needs to make a gif of you just doing that little like hand movement thing.
Edging out of the doghouse.
That is totally going in a YouTube video. I can calling that right now.
I love it. Michelle S. have Juju drop Tony for a waiver. Tough to drop Tony. I would say if Tony's the last player on your bench, I'd rather just hold Tony. But if you think you really need that spot for your lineup, I'd rather hang on to Juju. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I'd rather hang on to Juju as well.
I mean, Tony's like gets hurt every time he moves. Yeah. I mean, if you're, I don't know.
Does he need to get traded again to get healthy? Because that's what happened last time.
I'm sure
Giants
he was
healthy
fans,
for 1 week and then he got hurt again.
Giants fans are probably just laughing right now. Like, with
and
Tony
Juju is just in concussion protocol. So, I mean, he will be back out, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, he should be
I
fine.
prefer Juju, but.
So, it looked rough, but okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Jermaine DeColdest is a phenomenal name. I'm a huge fan of the name DeColdest. Thank you for bringing that to me. And I like Chris Olave. I think Chris Olave is going to be just fine. What do you think, Jen? Are you a Chris Olave fan?
Yes, I am. I have him on several teams, and he was great last week. I think he's I mean, he had 1 bad week a couple weeks ago, but I think he's been pretty solid. I like.
They got San Francisco this week.
Yeah, which isn't great, but he's, like
volume
I said
should
earlier,
still be there for him.
It's kind of all they have. So.
And secondary, like corner, isn't exactly the best part of the 49ers defense. So
that's right, because we saw DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, they were using him in the ways that you would want to game plan against the 49ers. And I think Olave can run a lot of the same routes that Hopkins can at this point. So it's just, I can see.
And Dortch was successful when he filled in for Rondale Moore, playing in the slot, playing outside. He was getting open against.
I had Dortch in like every league and dropped him, and now he's all of a sudden, back.
He'll be disappointing again next. I mean,
because he has a thumb injury anyway. So
yeah, I could see Olave with like a 10 target, 8 catch for like 80 to 90 yards, like type of game, something along those lines.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. All right, Jen, tell me about kickers. Is it a good week to stream kicker?
I would love to talk to you about kickers. Yes, it's a wonderful week to stream kickers. It's pretty rare that I say it's not. I mean, I think kickers are,
I'm a big fan of those first 2 names on your list, just so you know. Big fan.
I know. I figured you would be.
Oh, why?
Okay, so let's start with Jason Sanders, of course. Dolphins coming off a bye, so he's only 8% rostered, which is a crime. And as Brandon adjusts his Dolphin Tua jersey. But yes, so Sanders, this game is ridiculous as far as what, the predictions. Right now, Miami's a 12.5 point favorite over the Texans at home. They have the second highest implied team total of the week at 29.75 points. They're coming off a bye, so his rostership will never be this low. Pound Sanders if you can get him. I think he's going to have a great week. The second guy in my list here is Cameron Dicker, the kicker, who officially is the kicker for the LA Chargers because Dustin Hopkins was placed on IR. Cameron Dicker, he's been there for 3 weeks and he's put up 27 total fantasy points in the 3 weeks he's been with the Chargers. Like, he's quietly having a fantastic season. I mean, aside from the puns with his name, that's great and all, but he's actually putting up points. The Chargers are 4.5 point favorites at Arizona. And they have a 26-point implied team total. So I think he will, have plenty of opportunity to add to your roster this week if you can get him. And he is 12% rostered. So
I'm a huge fan of Dicker the kicker. Bring this on for the rest of my life.
And nothing against Dustin Hopkins. Like, Dustin Hopkins is fine. He's been around the league. But I mean, when you got Dicker the kicker, like, you got to root for the guy, right?
Right.
I mean,
you have to. And Hopkins, he plays Pinochle with me and Foster Moreau. So yeah, we're good friends, me and Hopkins. So
gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I feel bad for him. He toughed out that hamstring situation that night. Remember, he made like 3 kicks after already being injured.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he is now relegated to the IR.
Yeah, I hope he feels better and Dicker gets a big paycheck elsewhere.
And I hope he gets another job next season. But Dicker the kicker, I think he's going to stay throughout. I hope so. Third guy in the mix here is Jason Myers. Another guy that is coming off a bye, so he is at 29% rostership. Jason Myers is kicker 5 on the season, guys. I mean, for the Seattle Seahawks, he's kicker 5. They're 3.5-point favorites against Vegas. This game could be a shootout, right? Both defenses suck. So I think it should be a fun game, lots of points scored. And they've got the Seahawks are 25.50 is their implied team total. So I think he's in a good spot too. He's 29% rostered. They're all three of those guys are pretty interchangeable as far as, 1A, 1B, 1C. As far as streamers, I think they're great. I added a bonus. Once again, if there's a QB change for the Jets, Greg Zuerlein, he's Greg the leg, right? He's solid, but
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, he's on a shitty offense, right? Oh, sorry. He's on a very bad offense at the moment. So if they make the kicker change, I think that Greg Zuerlein is in play. They're actually favored over Chicago, which I found hard to believe, to be honest. But they're 4.5-point favorites over the Bears, 23 implied team total. So if you're desperate there, Greg Zuerlein option. If they make that change, if they stay with Zach Wilson, I would stay away.
I think that makes perfect sense. Excited about the kicker options. Had no idea Jason Myers was ranked that high on the season. Yeah. That's awesome. How is he still at 29%? I love
because he had a bye, so people dropped him. That's why.
Yeah.
Chris has added quotation marks instead of an apostrophe and a quotation mark. I like that. That's a good, clever way to go around it, Chris. I like it. So is that Chris's quote? Like,
yes.
Does that mean I have to go Chris?
Yes. Well, no, just one though.
Just one.
Just the one quote. Yeah. Chris's.
That's when you don't have to claw your way out of the doghouse. You just have to kind of inch your way out. Like I'm just a little bit. Chris, I like it. I'm a fan. Let's do defenses. It's a great week to stream defenses. The Dolphins versus Houston. We've talked about how good that should be for the Dolphins and how bad Houston has been. Only the Colts and the Broncos have scored less than Houston this season. And the Dolphins, they haven't been good defensively, but they do have Bradley Chubb now. They had 3 sacks last week. Bradley Chubb had half a sack. They held the Browns to 17 points last week. I'm not saying the Browns are great offensively, but Jacoby Brissett quietly hasn't been bad this year. Nick Chubb is great, and they did a pretty good job holding that in check. But last week, Washington was the first ranked defense against Houston. Previous 4 weeks, Giants, Philly, Tennessee, and Vegas all were 7th. So I think that you've got top 10, probably a top 10 defense in the Dolphins this week. Second, I'd go to Carolina. Carolina, not a great team, but they're quietly the defense special teams 13 on the season. So they have quality players on the defensive side of the ball. They have Brian Burns, who's a great pass rusher. Jeremy Chin is back. I believe he's gonna suit up. He's a game-changing playmaker in that defensive secondary. He plays a little bit of everything for them. And they're up against Denver. I just said Houston doesn't score. The Broncos score less than Houston as well. No one's scoring worse than the Broncos this year. So I think that Carolina is going to be able to keep that to be a low-scoring game and make it a third straight week with allowing just teen scoring. Remember, they held the Ravens to like 13 points. So they lost, but they held it to a low-scoring game, and they've got the type of pass rushing ability to make things happen. Russ probably isn't going to be turnover-prone, but I think the Panthers could still edge out a top 15 week for you. Vikings, I said the Carolinas quietly the defense, special teams 13, Vikings 14th on the season. So even though they haven't had a great year in general, 14th on the season, they're coming off a really bad week. I think they're going to be hungry. I don't think I don't think last week is indicative of who they are as a team. I think that they're going to come out and they're going to play very differently against this New England Patriots offense. New England tied for 3rd in interceptions, 4th in turnovers. Vikings tied for 3rd in takeaways this season. So I think you're going to see turnovers. You're going to see big defensive points. And I think they're going to be hungry. So Vikings, 33% rostership in Yahoo right now. I think that you can get them and they will be a solid defense one for you. So great week. If none of those are available, bonus the Steelers-Colts game. I kind of like both sides of that. So I kind of think that could be low scoring. Both those teams are kind of made to run and made to turn the ball over. And then Bears versus the Jets. If Zackety Zach is back, if he's behind center, I'm interested in that Bears defense. They're not good either, but the Jets stink. So if they start Joe Flacco or Mike White, I'm a little less excited because I do think the Jets can score against the Chicago Bears. Chris, I want to know, do you think the Vikings are better than what we saw last week. Like, how concerned should we be after that performance for all of the offensive players and for all of that defense? Because that was one of the most lopsided games I've seen all year.
Yeah, I think that they're better than what they've shown, but I think the answer to where they were at, because I don't think that they were as good as what they showed against the Bills, right? Because it took that 30-ish yard pass to Justin Jefferson on 4th down, the fumble in the end zone. I mean, all of that stuff needed to happen in order for them to take on what we assume to be Super Bowl contenders, right? And I don't think, and they're definitely not as bad as like only being able to put up like 3 points, Justin Jefferson only having 33 yards or whatever it was like last week. So I think the answer is somewhere in the middle. They're definitely more capable. I think Kirk is more capable of putting the ball in his playmaker's hands, just in the sense that we know that he's been targeting Justin Jefferson more on 3rd downs, pure passing situations. The running game, outside zone, has been working pretty well, like for Dalvin Cook. Even like TJ Hawkinson's involvement, like almost immediately after he got there, I think he walked into like a 20+% target share, like in his first 2 games getting to Minnesota. So like they know what they're supposed to do. They know their deficiencies on offense, and they think they made the proper moves in order to address them. Like TJ Hawkinson, like moving some of their offensive line movement along as well. So overall, I think they should be able to get things back on track. It's just that they found a team that can exploit some of their weaknesses, which is essentially, throw as much as you can at Kirk Cousins and watch his brain short circuit, which if you wind up having him pressured on 60% of his dropbacks, then that's what's going to happen. So the Cowboys had the right game plan. Micah Parsons is an all-pro level pass rusher. This is what's going to happen when those two things combine.
Yeah, I feel like if aliens came and challenged the Looney Tunes to a football game, Micah Parsons' house would be their very first stop. That's what I think. I think that's
his, and then Aaron Donald's.
And then Aaron Donald, yeah.
1 and 2. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Jen, I wanted to know, I'm talking bad defenses against bad offenses. Is that something you usually look at as well? Because it felt weird to pick the Dolphins, right? But you have to against the Texans, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a defensive guru by any stretch, but if I didn't have other defensive people in our 4for4 family to read articles, and I was just looking, that would be the first thing I would go to look for as far as streaming and picking. It makes sense to me.
I also feel like this year, and really the last few years, I feel like football teams are starting to do more of the we're not trying anymore this season, which is, I feel like that didn't used to really be a football thing. I feel like it's always been a basketball thing, but is that just me? Or what do you think, Jen?
I don't know. I think that, I think people have been tanking for quite a while, right? I mean, is that what you mean? Just kind of people that realize that they're in a position to not, listen, until they do a lottery situation, if they're going to reward teams for being at the bottom, then why not tank, right? I mean, it would make sense to me. If you went to, what the NBA does and does some sort of lottery, then I think teams might try a little more. But if you know that you're going to get, a better draft pick, and specifically when you know and see, you can watch film and you know who's coming out and you know who's going to be there, you can already plan, halfway through the season. You can be like, all right, like when the Dolphins tank for Tua, they tanked for Tua, They
did.
And they got caught and they got in trouble for it. But, if you don't get caught, then, sure.
I love the Dolphins got in trouble for all the wrong things.
Right?
They got penalized, which was good,
Uh-huh.
but they got in trouble for like talking to Tom Brady at a time that they weren't supposed to. I was like, you kind of missed the point there, their league. I'm sorry, I'm going away from streamers now and just yammering on about football.
Just discuss that you changed, that your name change is hilarious. I just noticed it.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah,
it's fantastic. I will say Sal did that.
I figured as much.
I just noticed it as well. So
I'm kind of bummed I didn't get one, but oh well.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, you're the most professional of us, Jen.
Oh, yeah, because I'm the one that just
What are you talking about? She just cussed on
minutes.
stream. She's the least professional.
We're allowed to cuss.
She did it professionally, though. It was a professional sounding swear.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Very professional.
I love it. Oh God!
All right, I will mercifully end this episode before it goes even further off the rails, and before I just start talking about the Blazers, which is very possible that could happen. Thank you, Chris and Jed. Always a pleasure. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, listeners. You can follow us on Twitter at Jen Eakins NFL, at Chris Allen FFWX, and at 2 Guys Brandon. Thanks for checking us out, and have a good day.